My parents treated me like a servant. The day before Christmas, Mom said, 25 of your sister's friends are coming. She expected me to serve. I smiled, flew to Florida. When they saw the empty kitchen, Mom went pale. The phone rang at 7 in the morning. I was lying on a beach chair at a hotel in Florida, watching the sun rise over the ocean. For the first time in 24 years, I wasn't watching the sunrise through the kitchen window while making breakfast for my parents. "Marie!" My mother's voice pierced the receiver like a knife. "Where the hell are you?" "Good morning, Mom. I'm in Florida." "Florida?" Her voice rose an octave. "It's Christmas today. The guests will be here in an hour, and nothing is ready. The kitchen is empty." I smiled as I watched the waves. Jackie sat next to me with his coffee, winked at me, and gave me a thumbs up. "Mom, I'm not going to be your servant anymore." Silence. Then an explosion. "Your maid? We raised you for 24 years, fed you, clothed you, and you're so ungrateful. We shouldn't have given birth to you 24 years ago." Those words hit me hard, as always, but this time I didn't crumble. "Maybe you really shouldn't have," I replied calmly and hung up the phone. My heart was beating so hard that it seemed like everyone on the beach could hear it. Jackie put his hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" For the first time in a long time. "Yes," I replied and closed my eyes. My thoughts returned to that house where I was never a daughter, where I was a servant from the day I learned to hold a broom. I was 7 when my mother first said, "Marie, sweep the kitchen." My father was reading the newspaper. My mother was watching a TV series about a hospital. I swept because I thought that's what all children did. At 8, I was already making breakfast. At first, simple things like scrambled eggs and toast. At 9, I washed the dishes, standing on a stool to reach the sink. At 10, I cooked full dinners for the whole family. Vita worked as a therapist at the local St. Francis hospital. She came home tired, kicked off her white shoes at the door, and collapsed into her favorite blue armchair. "Marie, bring me some tea, and make sure it's not cold. And find my candy. Always orders, never requests." I run to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and look for her favorite mint candies in the top cabinet. I bring it on a tray that was a gift for my mother's wedding. It's not hot enough. "Make it again." I go to make it again. Stefan commanded a construction crew, managing 12 guys at various sites throughout the city. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face perpetually red from the sun and wind. At home, he also liked to be in charge. "Marie, where are my clean shirts? Marie, why hasn't the floor been washed? Marie, where's my dinner? Marie, why hasn't my robe been washed?" Every evening, it was the same. He would sit down at the table, spread out the newspapers, and wait for me to serve him his plate. He never looked up to say thank you. If he didn't like something, he would grumble under his breath or sigh loudly. I never heard them say thank you or please. I never got hugs or kisses at night. I was a laborer who lived in the same house with them. I didn't even have my own room until I was 14. I slept on a fold-out couch in the living room until they converted the attic into my little corner. When I turned 16, I started talking about college. I dreamed of studying psychology and working with children. I wanted to help others who were as lost as I was. My mother was sitting in the kitchen with her friend Nicole, drinking wine after her night shift. I was washing the dishes, but I heard every word. "Your Marie is so obedient," Nicole said. "My Kate is 16 and already hanging out with boys, not thinking about school." "Marie is a smart girl," my mother agreed. "She knows her place." I turned to them. "Mom, I'd like to go to college." "To study psychology." My mother laughed so loudly that Nicole flinched. "Who will take care of the house? Who will cook? Who will clean? Who will wash my robes after night shifts? We don't have money for your whims." "But we can take out a loan. I'll work in my spare time. I'll pay it all back." "Enough." Dad, who had just entered the kitchen, snapped. "A girl doesn't need an education. You'll get married and be a housewife. For now, your place is here in this house." They talked about me as if I weren't in the room, as if I were a piece of furniture or a pet. "And why should she study?" added Mom. She already knows how to do everything. Cook, clean, and do laundry. Men are looking for wives like that. Nicole nodded. You're right. My Kate still has a lot to learn. My friends from school went to universities in different cities. Melissa went to Chicago to study journalism. Kevin went to New York to study engineering. Samantha went to California to study design. I stayed. I cooked, washed, cleaned. Day after day, year after year. My mother told her neighbors and colleagues how lucky she was with her daughter. She's such a good housekeeper, she does everything herself. I don't have to lift a finger. I come home from work and it smells like borscht. Everything is cleaned and ironed. Our neighbor, Mrs. Brown, always sighed, "You're so lucky, Vito. My Emma just hangs out in clubs." Marie understands that family is the most important thing, my mother replied proudly. And I wasn't there. I was in the kitchen, cooking their dinner. When I turned 20, I tried to find a job, quietly without telling my parents. I submitted my resume to the local library, a kindergarten, and a coffee shop near the center. My mother found out a week later. One of her colleagues saw me in the coffee shop. "Are you crazy?" My mother stood in the kitchen, disheveled after another argument with my quiet father. Who will cook borscht? Who will wash my robes? Who will do the cleaning? I come home after the night shift and the place is a mess. "Mom, I want to have my own life. I want to earn my own money." "Your own life." She waved her hand. "You live in our house, eat our food, wear what we buy for you. You sleep in our bed, use our electricity, our water. What kind of life is that? I can pay for all of this." "Pay for what?" "For raising you, for feeding you for 20 years? No, daughter. Now it's your turn to take care of us. I didn't take that job, or the next one, or the one after that." Every evening, Dad would add, "As long as you live under our roof, you'll do what we say. If you don't like it, no one's stopping you." But I couldn't go anywhere. I had no money and no work experience, except for cleaning and cooking. Last year, I met Jackie at the bus stop near the hospital. I was waiting for the bus after another trip to the store to buy groceries for my mom. I had to buy her favorite yogurt, which was only sold in one store on the other side of town. He worked as a mechanic at the Mica garage and lived with his parents in a neighboring district. 26 years old, curly red hair, hands always stained with machine oil, and a sincere smile. When he first came to our house, my mother immediately told me to bring him tea and cookies, homemade cookies that I baked every Saturday. "Marie is our helper," she said with a smile, sitting in an armchair and not getting up to greet the guest. "Without her, we would be lost. She has grown into such a good housekeeper." Jackie looked at me in surprise. Then he looked at my mother, who sat calmly while I set the table, served tea, and arranged cookies on a plate with a floral pattern. Later, when we were walking in the park, he asked, "Do they always talk to you like that? As if you were their maid?" I didn't know how to answer. For me, it was normal. They're my parents. It's their house. But it's your house, too. You're their daughter, not a hired worker. In Jackie's family, everything was different. His mother, Lindsay, asked my opinion about movies, books, and the news. His father, Rob, joked with me and told funny stories from his job at the factory. They talked to me like a person, not a servant. At the dinner table, everyone had a say. Even Jackie's younger brother, 16-year-old Tommy, could argue with his parents about politics or sports. "Why do you talk so little?" Lindsay asked. "You have an opinion about everything." "At home, they rarely ask me what I think," I replied honestly. "Parents should be interested in their children's opinions. Not just whether the floor is washed. The word exploit seemed too strong to me when Lindsay first used it. But the more time I spent with Jackie's family, the more I realized that what was happening in our home was not love. 3 days ago at dinner, as I was serving her a plate of steamed vegetables, my mother announced, "My friends from the hospital want to celebrate Christmas with us. With their husbands and children, of course. There will be 25 people in total. Let's show them how to welcome guests." I looked up from the stove where I was cooking potatoes. "When will it be?" "Tomorrow evening. Prepare everything traditional. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce, salad with mayonnaise, dessert. And you'll clean the apartment until it shines. The windows, too. They haven't been washed in a long time. Mom, tomorrow is Christmas. So what? Do you have other plans? She laughed without even looking up from the TV. I never had any plans. I was always where I was needed. Always ready to carry out the next assignment. Always available. Like a piece of furniture. But that evening, something inside me broke. Maybe it was because the day before, Jackie had invited me to Florida, and I automatically refused without even thinking. Maybe it was because I saw pity for me in his eyes. Or maybe because I finally turned 24 and realized that life was passing me by. That night, I packed my suitcase. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Through the wall, I could hear my dad flipping through the channels and my mom talking on the phone with another friend, discussing tomorrow's party. Yes, Catherine will be there. And Janice with her new husband. Oh, and Dr. Miller promised to come with his wife. But don't worry, I have an assistant, Mom laughed. An assistant, not a daughter, an assistant. I got up, went to the old chest of drawers, and pulled out the suitcase my grandmother had once given me. Small, worn, but sturdy. I started packing my things. Jeans, sweaters, underwear. I moved quietly so as not to wake my parents. My phone vibrated. Jackie. How are you? Tomorrow is your big party, he wrote. I'm going with you to Florida, I replied, and immediately felt my heart beat faster. Seriously? What about your parents? Let them celebrate on their own. He didn't reply right away. He probably didn't believe me. I'll pick you up at 6 a.m. The plane leaves at 9. I put the last shirt in my suitcase and zipped it up. My hands were shaking. The morning of December 24th began as usual. Mom got up at 6, as usual after her night shift, and went to take a shower. I pretended to be asleep. I heard her walking around the kitchen, looking for breakfast, which I hadn't made. "Marie," she shouted, "where's my coffee?" I didn't answer. 15 minutes later, I heard a car horn. Jackie. I got up, grabbed my suitcase, and tiptoed out of the house. Mom was still in the bathroom. Dad was snoring in the bedroom. "You're really doing this," Jackie said when I got in the car. "Looks like it." He smiled and kissed me on the cheek. "I'm proud of you." The drive to the airport took an hour. It was my first time flying. My heart was beating so hard that I was afraid Jackie would hear it. As the plane took off, I pressed myself against the window and watched our town get smaller and smaller. "How are you feeling?" Jackie asked. "Like I'm breathing for the first time." Florida welcomed us with warmth and sunshine. In December, it was 25 degrees Celsius, with palm trees and the ocean. I had never seen the ocean in person. The hotel was small but cozy. Jackie booked a room with a view of the beach and 2 separate beds, although I wouldn't have minded one. But he was always a gentleman. "What do you want to do first?" he asked when we had unpacked our things. "I want to go to the beach. I want to touch the ocean." We walked on the hot sand, and for the first time in my life, I felt the waves tickling my feet. The water was warm and salty. I laughed like crazy. "Why did you wait so long?" Jackie asked as we sat on the sand. "I don't know. I guess I didn't believe I could live any other way." "Do you believe it now?" I looked at the horizon where the sky merged with the water. I'm starting to. Meanwhile, a real drama was unfolding at home. Later, my mother told her friends in detail how that horrible day had gone. Vita woke up at 8 and saw that my bed was gone. She thought I was already in the kitchen making breakfast. But the kitchen was empty. The refrigerator was closed, the stove was cold, and the coffee maker was silent. "Marie," she shouted, "where are you?" Silence. "Stefan." She woke her husband. "Marie isn't home." Dad muttered something about me probably going to the store. But at 9 in the morning, all the stores were still closed. At 10, my mother found a note on the kitchen table. "I'm going away for a few days. Don't worry." "What do you mean, don't worry?" Mom yelled, calling everyone she could think of. "I have 25 guests today, and she's gone somewhere." The first thing they did was call Jackie, but his phone was turned off. We were flying over the Atlantic. "That guy knows something," Dad said. I'm sure they went somewhere together. What am I supposed to do now? Mom paced around the kitchen like a caged tiger. The guests will arrive at 6 and we don't even have any bread. For the first time in many years, Stefan found himself having to cook for himself. He opened the refrigerator, but all he found was milk, eggs, and leftover soup from the day before. Maybe we should cancel the party, he suggested timidly. Cancel it? His mother turned pale. I've already told everyone what a luxurious table there will be. Catherine promised to bring her famous potato casserole, and I was going to outdo her. They went to the supermarket at 11 in the morning. Vida never bought groceries. That was always my job. She didn't know where to find things in the store, how much to buy for 25 people, or how to choose meat. How much turkey do we need? She asked the butcher. How many people? 25. Then 17 or 18 pounds. How much is that? When she heard the price, Mom was shocked. $70 just for a turkey. What else do we need? Stefan asked, pushing the cart. I don't know. Vida began to panic. Marie always planned everything. Potatoes, vegetables, salads. How do you cook a turkey? How long does it take? They spent 2 hours in the store, bought only $200 worth of food, and still weren't sure if it would be enough. At home, chaos ensued. Vida had never cooked complicated dishes before. The most she had ever made was scrambled eggs and toast for breakfast, and now she had to cook for 25 people. How do you roast a turkey? She asked Stefan. How should I know? You're a therapist. You should know about food. I treat people. I don't cook for an army. They found a recipe on the internet. The turkey had to be roasted for 4 hours, and it was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We won't make it, Stefan realized. Mom called a few friends, asking them to bring something ready-made, but everyone was busy with their own preparations. Catherine, can you bring something else besides the potato casserole? Vida begged. What about your famous turkey? Catherine asked in surprise. Marie is sick. She can't cook. Oh, what a pity. She's such a master chef. Okay, I'll bring a salad. By 4 o'clock, it was clear that the party would be a failure. The turkey was still raw, the potatoes weren't peeled, and the salads weren't chopped, and the first guests would arrive at 6. We need to call somewhere and order some ready-made food, said Dad. Where? Where would we go? On Christmas, all the restaurants are either closed or fully booked. They started calling everywhere pizzerias, fast food restaurants, even the Chinese restaurant. Everywhere they got the same answer, either closed or orders only in 3 hours. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Mom sat in the kitchen and cried. Everyone will see that I can't do it without Marie. Meanwhile, Jackie and I were lying on the beach drinking cocktails with little umbrellas. Do you think they're worried? I asked. Probably. Does that bother you? I thought about it. Was I worried? A little. But I was more worried about something else. I'm thinking about the fact that I'm 24 and this is the first time I'm doing something for myself. Better late than never. At 6:30, Stefan drove to the nearest gas station. It was the only place where you could buy any food. He picked up turkey sandwiches, hamburgers, hot dogs, bags of chips, and a case of beer. When the first guests arrived, Dr. Miller and his wife, and Catherine with a potato casserole. They saw the table covered with food from the gas station. Vito, where's your famous turkey? Asked Dr. Miller's wife. Marie is sick, muttered my mother. We had to improvise. The guests were polite but surprised. Everyone knew how lavishly Vida usually entertained, how delicious the food always was in their home. And here, sandwiches from the deli and warm beer. Where's Marie herself? Catherine asked. I'd like to wish her a Merry Christmas. She's resting. She's not feeling well. But Catherine wasn't stupid. Neither were the other guests. They understood that Marie simply wasn't home, and they understood why the table was so modest. Your daughter always takes such good care of her family, said one of Mom's colleagues. Without her, you're like a fish out of water. Vida just nodded and smiled through gritted teeth. The party ended at 9. Usually the guests stayed until midnight, but this time everyone hurried home. When the last guest left, Mom sat down on the sofa and burst into tears. "This was the worst Christmas of my life," she said. "It's all because of Marie," Dad muttered. "That ungrateful girl." "This was the worst Christmas of my life," she said to Dad when the last guest closed the door behind him. "It's all because of Marie," Dad grumbled as he collected empty beer bottles. "That ungrateful girl. We raised her for 24 years, and she let us down like this. She's coming back tomorrow. And then I'll tell her exactly what I think," Mom said, wiping her tears with a paper towel. "You will?" Stefan stopped in the middle of the kitchen. "She should be on her knees begging for forgiveness. You should have seen Dr. Miller's face when he saw those sandwiches." Vida nodded. Her anger boiled like water in a kettle. "I did everything for her for 24 years. I fed her, clothed her, gave her a roof over her head, and she humiliated us in front of everyone. They cleaned up until midnight. Stefan, who was used to waking up to a clean house after every party, was now washing dishes and taking out the trash himself. Vida wiped the tables and vacuumed the carpet. "We'll never have a party without Marie again," she said, folding the dirty napkins. "Maybe we shouldn't have them at all," replied Dad. "It's too much work." But what annoyed them most was not that they had to cook and clean up themselves, but that all their friends and colleagues had seen that without Marie, they were helpless. Before leaving, Catherine said, "Vida, your Marie is a real gem. Take care of her. Not many people have daughters like her." "Yes," agreed Dr. Miller's wife. "My Cindy won't even wash the dishes after herself, but yours is a real homemaker." These words stung Vito. She had always been proud of how others envied her obedient daughter, and today everyone saw that she was nothing without this obedient daughter. Meanwhile, I was lying on a beach chair at the hotel, listening to the sound of the waves. Jackie was sleeping in the bed next to me, snoring quietly after a busy day. We spent the whole day at the beach, went on an excursion to the lighthouse, and had lunch at a seafood restaurant. I tried squid and shrimp for the first time. At home, my mother always said they were expensive whims. In the evening, we walked along the promenade, watched street musicians, and bought ice cream. The usual things that all tourists do. But for me, it was like flying to Mars. When Jackie suggested going to the movies, I laughed. "Do you know when I last went to the movies?" "When?" "When I was 16, at my high school graduation. And after that, never again. My mom said it was a waste of money. We watched a romantic comedy, ate popcorn, and held hands in the dark. I felt like a teenager going on our first date. Late that night, when we got back to the hotel, I called my old school friend, Melissa. She lived in Chicago and worked for a magazine. "Marie," she exclaimed happily. "How are you? How are you spending Christmas?" "In Florida," I replied. "In Florida? What about your parents?" "They're celebrating without me." Melissa laughed. "Finally. I always said you spent too much time at home. How's the trip? Like being reborn. What about work? Have you found anything?" I fell silent. What work? I hadn't worked anywhere. I lived entirely off my parents, like a greenhouse plant. "Marie," Melissa heard my silence. "Are you working?" "Not yet. I'm helping Mom and Dad around the house." "Helping?" "Marie, you're 24 years old. What do you mean, helping?" I was embarrassed to explain that I had never had a real job, that I lived like a teenager who was given pocket money for doing chores around the house. "It's hard to explain," I replied. "Listen, when you get back, let's meet up. I have a proposal." "What is it?" "I'll tell you when we meet." When I hung up, my heart was beating fast. It was the first time in years that a friend had offered me something. She didn't ask me to cook or clean. She made me an offer. Jackie woke up and looked at me. "Who are you talking to?" "Melissa, an old friend from school." "And what did she say?" "That she has a proposal for me." "A job?" "Maybe." He smiled. "See? Life is already starting to change. I looked out the window at the dark ocean. Somewhere out there, hundreds of miles away, my parents were going to bed after the worst Christmas of their lives, and I was lying in a warm hotel room, planning my future and feeling alive for the first time in years. My phone vibrated again, a text message from an unknown number. "Marie, it's Mom. I'm calling from my neighbor's phone because mine is dead. Where are you? When are you coming back? We need to talk." I showed the message to Jackie. "Are you going to reply?" "Tomorrow," I said, and turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I ignored my mom. And you know what? It felt great. We returned on the evening of December 27th. The plane landed at 7, and I got home around 9. Jackie offered to drive me, but I declined. I wanted to meet my parents alone. As soon as I approached the building, I knew something was wrong. There were 2 large boxes and my old gym bag standing outside our house. My heart sank. I walked closer. It was my stuff. All my stuff. Clothes, books, cosmetics, even an old doll that my grandfather had given me when I was a child. Everything was neatly packed in boxes, as if someone was preparing to move. I went up to the second floor and rang the doorbell. My dad opened the door. His face was stony, his eyes cold. "There you are," he said instead of greeting me. "Dad, what are those boxes downstairs?" "Your things," my mother replied, appearing behind him. "Gather them up and go wherever you want." I went into the apartment. Everything looked the same as always, except I was no longer there. My photos had been taken down from the walls, my books had been removed from the shelves, even my favorite mug was gone from the kitchen. "I don't understand," I said. "Why? Why?" My mother exploded. "You disgraced us in front of all our friends. Dr. Miller is still laughing about our sandwiches from the dressing. Mom, I just went to relax." "Relax," she laughed hysterically. "We had an important party, and you ran off with some loser mechanic. Jackie's not a loser." "Jackie, not Jackie." Dad waved his hand. "It's not about him. It's about the fact that you let us down." I sat down on the sofa, the same one I had slept on until I was 14. "You want me to apologize for doing something for myself for the first time in my life?" "For yourself?" Vida stood in front of me, her arms crossed over her chest. "Did you think about us? Who cooked for your parents? Who cleaned up after guests?" "You did." "Like all adults do." "We're not used to it," my mother shouted. "We work, we get tired, and you're our support. I'm your daughter, not your servant." Silence. My parents looked at each other. "A daughter," my dad said slowly, "should respect her parents. Help them, not make them steal food at the gas station." "You didn't steal, you bought it." "Don't twist my words," Mom snapped. "We're in this mess because of your selfishness." I got up from the couch. "Selfishness?" "Mom, how many years have I been cooking, washing, cleaning? How many years have I given up everything so that you could live comfortably?" "It's your duty," Vida snapped. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Do I have to pay for that my whole life? As long as we're alive, yes." Those words hit me like a bolt of lightning. I realized that they really thought that way, that I owed them my whole life for giving birth to me. What if I want to get married? Have children? Live my own life? If you get married, you'll take care of your husband and children. "But for now, your place is here," said Dad. "What if I don't want to?" Mom laughed. "You don't want to? What can you do besides cooking and cleaning? What education do you have? What work experience?" She knew where to hit. I really had nothing. Even my secondary education was mediocre. It's hard to study when you spend half your time in the kitchen. "No one will hire you," Mom continued. "At best, you could be a cleaning lady in some office. For pennies. But here you have a home, food, everything you need. And for that, I have to be your free servant? You should be a grateful daughter." I looked at them both. Dad stood silently, nodding approvingly at Mom's words. Mom looked at me with the condescension with which one looks at a disobedient child. What if I refuse? Then take your junk and get out of here, Mom said coldly. You won't be a burden on us anymore. If you're so ungrateful, let others feed you. Seriously? Absolutely. The door is right there. No one is holding you back. I stood in the middle of the living room and looked at the people who had given birth to me. There was no love or concern in their eyes, only resentment and disappointment that their free labor had decided to rebel. Fine, I said finally. I'll go. Go, Mom nodded. Let's see how long you last without us. And you'll come back, Dad added. Where else can you go? In a week or two, you'll come back and beg us to take you back. I won't come back. You will. And then we'll talk about how to behave with your parents. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. And don't think we'll help you, my mother shouted after me. You won't get a penny from us. No, thank you, I replied without turning around. And don't come when you're hungry. I stopped at the door and turned around. You know what, Mom? For 24 years, I thought you loved me, that you needed me as a daughter, but it turns out you only need me as a free servant. Don't be ridiculous. When was the last time you asked me how I was doing? What I wanted? What I dreamed of? Mom opened her mouth but said nothing. Don't you remember? Neither do I, because you never asked. All you cared about was whether the floor was washed and dinner was ready. We gave you a roof over your head, for which I paid with 24 years of free labor. I think we're even. I left the apartment and closed the door. My hands were shaking as I walked down the stairs. Jackie was standing next to the boxes with my things. When he saw me, he ran over. What happened? Why are your things here? I was kicked out, I replied and burst into tears. He hugged me tightly. Everything will be fine. Let's go to our place. Jackie, I can't live with you. It's not right. You can. Mom has already arranged everything. We have a spare room, Tommy's old room, until he leaves for college. We loaded my things into the car and drove off. On the way, I called Melissa. Marie, how are you? How did your parents react to the trip? They kicked me out of the house, I replied briefly. What? Seriously? Seriously. Melissa, you said you had an offer for me. Yes, but let's deal with your situation first. Where are you now? I'm going to a friend's house. He offered to let me stay with them. Okay, let's meet tomorrow and talk. I think I can help you. Jackie's house welcomed me with warmth and light. Lindsay, his mother, hugged me like her own daughter. My child, what's wrong? She said, stroking my head. How could they do that to their own daughter? They said I was ungrateful, I explained through my tears. Ungrateful for what? For working for them your whole life? Rob, Jackie's dad, helped carry the boxes. Marie, you can always live with us for as long as you need, he said. We have a spare room, and you're like a daughter to us. I couldn't believe it. These people who had known me for only a year were treating me better than my own parents. Tommy's room was small but cozy. Lindsay put out fresh linens and placed flowers on the windowsill. Get some rest, dear. Tomorrow we'll start planning your new life. That night, I lay in a strange room and I thought about the last 24 years, about how my mother never asked my opinion, about how my father only talked to me when he needed something, about how they forbade me from going to college, about all the missed opportunities, the lost years. And then I thought about today, about how easily they gave up on me, how quickly they packed my things, as if I were not their daughter, but a tenant who was behind on her rent. At breakfast that morning, Lindsay said, Marie, we need to have a serious talk. What are your plans for the future? I'm going to look for a job. Melissa said she has an offer. That's good. What about a place to live? I don't know yet. Maybe rent a room somewhere. Nonsense. Rob waved his hand. Live here until you get on your feet. But I can't pay anything. Who's asking you to? You're like our daughter. Jackie loves you and we love Jackie. I cried again, this time out of gratitude. Just one thing, Lindsay added. Don't let yourself go. Your parents did a lot of damage, but you have to move on with your life. Don't feel sorry for yourself. I don't feel sorry for myself, I replied. I'm angry. And rightly so. Anger is energy. You have to use it properly. During the day, I met Melissa at a coffee shop in the city center. She had come to visit her parents for the weekend and looked successful and confident. Expensive clothes, a fashionable haircut, new shoes. Tell me everything, she said, ordering a latte. I told her about the trip to Florida, about my parents' reaction, about being kicked out. That's awful, Melissa said briefly. I always suspected that things weren't going well at home, but to this extent. What's your offer? I asked. The magazine I work for is looking for an assistant editor. The salary isn't great, but it's a start. Plus, you can write short articles. If you prove yourself, you'll rise quickly. But I don't have any experience. You'll learn. The main thing is brains and desire. And you have that. It was the first real opportunity in my life, the first door to real life. But there's one problem, Melissa continued. The job is in Chicago. I'm ready to move. Really? Absolutely. Melissa smiled. Then let's go together tomorrow. I'll introduce you to the editor. That evening, I sat in Tommy's room and made plans. I planned my new life, a job in Chicago, my own apartment, independence, and I planned my revenge, because my parents were very wrong to think I was helpless. 24 years of living with them taught me not only how to cook and clean, they taught me to observe, listen, and remember. And I remembered a lot of interesting things about my dad, Stefan, and his construction business. The interview at the magazine went better than I expected. The editor, an elegant woman in her 50s named Susan, looked at me intently. You don't have any experience in media, she stated. Yes, but I'm a quick learner and I'm willing to work overtime, I replied. Melissa says you're organized and responsible. That's important. The trial period is 3 months. The salary is $1,200 a month. Is that okay? $1,200. It was the first money I had ever earned myself. Of course, it wasn't much for living in Chicago, but it was a start. It's fine, I nodded. Start work on February 1st. Find a place to live and get settled before then. On my way home, I did the math. The first month's rent plus the deposit would be about $2,000. Food, clothes, and transportation would be another $1,000. And I had $120 in my pocket. All my savings over the years. Where would I get the money to move? In the evening, I sat in Tommy's room and thought about my options. Asked Jackie and his parents for a loan, but they had already done so much for me. Go to the bank for a loan? Without a job or credit history, they wouldn't even listen to me. And then I remembered the garage. Dad always kept various building materials in the garage. Cement, rebar, tiles, plumbing fixtures. He said they were leftovers from projects that could be used for home repairs. My mom never asked where it all came from, but I saw it, and I heard it. 5 years ago, when I was 19, I was cleaning my dad's office and accidentally overheard his phone conversation with some guy named Mike. Yeah, the cement is great. 50 bags, $20 a bag. Cash, as usual. Tomorrow evening, near the old warehouse. I didn't pay much attention at the time. I thought Dad was just buying materials for the house. But then there were more and more conversations like that. Always cash, always in the evening, always somewhere on the outskirts of town. I also remembered how Dad brought home new tools that cost hundreds of dollars. With his salary as a brigade commander, it was strange. Mom didn't ask. Dad didn't explain. Last year, when I was helping him clean out the garage, I found a box of documents. Invoices, receipts, notes. Everything was signed S. Dixon. That was Dad's name. But the addresses were different. Some I recognized. They were construction sites where his brigade worked. Others were unfamiliar. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now that I needed money and my parents had kicked me out of the house, I started to think differently. The next day, I drove to our neighborhood. I parked around the corner and watched the house. My parents were at work. I knew that for sure. Mom was at the hospital. Dad was at the construction site. I had the keys to the garage. Dad gave them to me 3 years ago when he asked me to bring him some tools. The garage turned out to be full of all sorts of stuff: tiles in boxes, plumbing fixtures in packages, bags of cement, rolls of insulation. Everything was new, with store labels still on it. I photographed everything, every box, every label, every barcode. Then I found the box with the documents. It was behind an old bicycle covered with a tarp. The documents were interesting: delivery notes for materials from construction sites, receipts for the sale of these same materials to private individuals. The amounts did not match. For example, my father received 100 bags of cement for a project, but wrote in the report that he had used 80. 20 had disappeared. I photographed all the documents, every page, every receipt, every delivery note. Then I went to the construction site where my dad was working, a large shopping center on the outskirts of the city. I parked opposite and watched. At 4 o'clock, my dad came out from behind the fence with 2 guys from his crew. They loaded bags of something and rolls of insulation into their truck. I filmed everything on my phone. Then I followed them. They didn't go home, but to an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. A man in an expensive suit and a SUV was waiting for them there. I parked behind an old container and filmed with my phone. I filmed my dad handing the bags to the stranger. I filmed the stranger counting the money. I filmed my dad putting a wad of bills in his pocket. All this lasted about 15 minutes. Then the stranger drove away, and my dad and the guys returned to the construction site. For the next 3 days, I gathered evidence. I followed my dad, photographed his meetings with buyers, and wrote down license plate numbers. I accumulated over 100 photos and several videos. The most valuable was a video where my dad says to a buyer, "This is good tile, Spanish." At the site, it costs $50 per square foot, but I'll sell it to you for $30. Cash only, no checks. When I had enough evidence, I went to the office of the construction company where my dad worked, Miller and Sons, a large office in the city center. I found out that his boss was David Miller Jr., the son of the company's founder. I didn't go into the office, I just scouted the situation. I found out the work schedule and met the secretary, introducing myself as Stephen Dixon's daughter. "Oh, Mr. Dixon is a very good employee," said the secretary. "He's been with us for 20 years. Very reliable." "Yes, my dad is very conscientious," I agreed. In the evening, I sat in Tommy's room and looked through the evidence I had collected. Photos, documents, videos. It was enough to get Stephen Dixon fired and sent to jail for theft. But I didn't want to put him in jail. I wanted justice. I had worked for my parents for free for 24 years. I cooked, did laundry, cleaned. I saved them money on a cleaning lady, a cook, a housekeeper. How much does that cost? A cleaner, $200 a week. A cook, $300. A housekeeper, $400. A total of $900 a week, $3,600 a month. Over 24 years, more than $1 million. Of course, they fed and clothed me, but that's a parent's duty, not a favor. And I worked beyond my duties as a daughter. It was time to get paid. The next day, I called my mom. "Marie?" she said, surprised. "What do you want?" "To talk. Can we meet?" "What is there to talk about?" "You made your choice." "Mom, it's important. It's about Dad." "Dad? What about Dad?" "It's better to talk in person." "Tonight, at 7, at the Starbucks near the hospital." My mother arrived at 7 sharp. She looked tired after the night shift, but alert. "What did you want?" she asked as she ordered coffee. "To tell you about Dad's side job." "What side job?" I took out my phone and showed her the photo. Dad was at the warehouse handing bags of cement to a strange man. "Where did you take this?" my mother whispered. "Last week, and this is his garage." I showed her the next photo. "See all these materials? They're stolen from a construction site. My mother denied it at first, but when I showed her the documents from the garage, she turned pale. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "Justice." "What justice?" "I worked for you for free for 24 years. Do the math, cleaning, cooking, housekeeping. That's thousands of dollars a month." "You're our daughter." "Exactly. A daughter, not an employee. but you used me as an employee." Mom was silent. "I want compensation," I continued, "for my years of service." "How much?" she asked quietly. 2 years' worth of housing, plus a car." "What kind of car?" "A Toyota RAV4, new." Mom laughed. "You're crazy. That costs $50,000. And 24 years of work as a cleaner, cook, and housekeeper costs $1 million. I'm only asking for $50,000. It's a fair price." "What if we refuse?" I showed her the phone number on the screen. "David Miller Jr.'s office, Dad's boss. I think he'll be interested in the photos and documents." Mom looked at me in horror. "You wouldn't dare." "I would. You taught me to be strong. True, not where you expected. Let me talk to Dad." "Of course. But the decision is due by tomorrow evening. Otherwise, I'm going to the office." I hardly slept that night. Part of me couldn't believe I was blackmailing my own parents, but another part said they had brought this on themselves. The next day, my mother called at 3 in the afternoon. "Marie, come over. We need to talk." I came. My parents were sitting in the kitchen, both looking gloomy. "Sit down," my dad said. I sat down across from them. "Show me everything you have," he asked. I showed him the photos, documents, and videos. Dad looked at it silently. Then he put the phone down. "Smart girl," he said finally. "You've learned how to blackmail." "I've learned how to protect my interests." "Your interests? We raised you, fed you. That's your duty as parents. And I worked beyond my duties as a daughter." Dad sighed. "How much do you want?" "I already told Mom. Housing for 2 years plus a car. That's very expensive." "Cheaper than prison for theft." A long pause. "And then?" Mom asked. "Then you'll leave us alone? Then I'll go to Chicago and start a new life. And I'll never see you again if that's what you want." My parents looked at each other. "Okay," Dad finally said, "but on one condition. You give us all the documents and photos. Forever. I'll keep copies for myself. As insurance." "What insurance?" "If you ever try to blackmail or threaten me, the documents will end up with law enforcement." Dad grimaced but nodded. "Agreed." The following week, Dad opened a bank account for me and transferred $28,000 into it. Enough for 2 years of living expenses in Chicago. We bought a car together. I chose a gray 2023 Toyota RAV4, $29,000. As we were signing the paperwork at the dealership, Dad said, "I hope you're happy." "I hope you've learned your lesson," I replied. "What lesson?" "That daughters are not free labor." He didn't answer. In the evening, I drove up to Jackie's house in my new car. The whole family came out to see it. "Marie, where did you get the car?" Jackie asked. "My parents gave it to me as compensation for my years of service." "Really? They changed their minds?" "You could say that." Lindsay looked at me intently. "Something's not right here." "Tell me the truth," I told her, "about the evidence, the blackmail, the deal." "Wow," said Rob. "I didn't think you were capable of that." "Neither did I, but they taught me." "Don't you feel sorry for them?" Lindsay asked. I thought about it. "No, they used me for 24 years. Now I use them. We're even." "What's next?" "Next I'm going to Chicago and starting a new life. A real life." That evening, I sat in my new car and called Melissa. "Everything's ready," I told her. "A place to live, a car, money for the first few months. We can go." "How did you manage to organize everything so quickly?" "It's a long story. I'll tell you when we meet." "Okay. Are we leaving tomorrow?" "Tomorrow." I hung up and looked at my parents' house. The windows were dark. They were probably already asleep. Were they thinking about me? Did they regret what had happened? I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what my parents thought. And it was the best feeling in the world. Chicago greeted me with rain and wind. February in the big city turned out to be much colder than at home. I drove my new car through unfamiliar streets, trying to find the apartment I had rented online. The house was in the Lincoln Park neighborhood in an old brick building. The apartment was small, a room, a kitchenette, and a tiny bathroom. But it was my own apartment, the first one in my life. $2,000 a month plus a deposit, said the landlady, Mrs. Chen, an Asian woman in her 60s. Pets allowed, but no more than one. Laundry in the basement. I signed the contract with a trembling hand. My name looked unusual on the document. Marie Dixon, tenant. Not daughter, not assistant. Tenant. The first few days were difficult. The apartment seemed empty and foreign. I had no furniture except for an old mattress that the previous tenant had left behind. I slept on the floor, ate from paper plates, and sat on cardboard boxes. The job at the magazine turned out to be more difficult than I had expected. Susan, the editor, was demanding and impatient. "Marie, where's the material on fashion trends? The article was supposed to be ready yesterday." "I'm working on it," I replied, trying not to show how nervous I was. "Working on it." That means it's not ready. In journalism, there's no such thing as working on it. There's ready and not ready. The first week, I worked 14 hours a day, trying to understand how everything worked. Melissa helped as much as she could, but she had her own tasks. "Don't panic," she said. "The first month is always difficult. You'll get used to it." But the problem wasn't just work. The problem was me. For 24 years, I had lived according to a schedule set by others. Get up at 6, make breakfast, clean up, make lunch, clean up, make dinner, clean up, sleep. Every day was the same, and now I had to decide everything myself. What to eat, when to sleep, how to spend my weekends. It seemed simple, but it turned out to be extremely difficult. On Saturday, I woke up at 9 in the morning and didn't know what to do. At home on Saturdays, I always did a general cleaning, did laundry, cooked for the week. And now, the apartment is small, there's nothing to wash, and cooking for one person is unusual. I sat on the floor until lunchtime, looking out the window and not knowing what to do. In the evening, I called Jackie. "How are things in the big city?" he asked. "It's difficult," I replied honestly. "I don't know how to live alone." "What do you mean?" "I don't know how to make decisions, even the simplest ones. What to buy at the store, what TV show to watch, what time to go to bed." Jackie laughed. "Marie, that's normal. You've lived your whole life by other people's rules. Now you have to learn to live by your own." "What if I don't have my own rules?" "Then you'll make them up." Easy to say, hard to do. After a week of working at the magazine, I realized it wasn't for me. Writing about fashion and celebrities when I have no experience in either, Susan expressed her dissatisfaction more and more often. "Marie, your article on spring trends sounds like you copied it from Wikipedia." I tried. Trying isn't enough. You need talent and experience. After a month of work, Susan called me into her office. "Marie, this isn't working," she said bluntly. "Journalism isn't for you. Give me another chance." I did. Several chances. "I'm sorry." That was the end of my dream of a career in journalism. I left the office with a cardboard box of my personal belongings and a feeling of complete failure. That evening, I called Melissa. "Don't be upset," she said. "Journalism isn't for everyone. You'll find something else." "What else?" "I have no education, no experience." "You have hands, you have a head." That's enough. But at the time, I didn't understand what she meant. The next week, I looked for a job. I submitted resumes to stores, cafes, offices. Everywhere I got the same answer: no work experience. Sorry. My money was running out fast. Rent, food, utilities, everything cost more than I expected. After a month, I had $300 left. I sat in my apartment and cried. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I really was useless without them. And then I saw an ad on the internet. Car wash administrator needed. No experience necessary. Hourly wage. The Shiny Wheels car wash was located in an industrial area. It was a small business. 2 car wash bays, a small reception area, and an office. The owner, Carlos Martinez, was a man of about 45 with a friendly smile. "The job is simple," he explained. Register customers, take payments, keep things tidy. $9 an hour, 40 hours a week, $360 a week, $1,440 a month. Barely enough to pay the rent, but better than nothing. When can I start? I asked. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning. My first day at the car wash was chaotic. Customers came one after another, each in a hurry, each wanting something special. I just need the outside washed, but thoroughly. I have a date today. Me, on the contrary, just the interior. My kids spilled juice yesterday. How long will a full wash take? I have a meeting in an hour. I wrote things down, counted, took money, trying to remember everything. By lunchtime, my head was spinning. Carlos saw how I was struggling. It's okay, he said. The first week is always difficult. The main thing is to smile at customers and not lose money. Gradually, I got used to it. I learned to quickly write down orders, calculate costs, and communicate with customers. It turned out that I was good at finding common ground with people. "This girl is always smiling," said a regular customer one day, an elderly man in an expensive Mercedes. "It's nice to come here." Carlos heard this. "Marie, you're doing a good job. Starting next month, I'm raising your salary to $10 an hour." It was the first praise and promotion I had ever received in my life. After 3 months, I felt that I was beginning to understand how to live independently. I get up at 7, have coffee and toast for breakfast, and go to work. I work until 6 in the evening, then buy groceries, cook a simple dinner, read or watch TV series. I spent my weekends in different ways. Sometimes I went to museums or parks. Sometimes I just lay at home and did nothing. That was also freedom, the right to do nothing. One day, a man who caught my attention came to the car wash. He was tall, athletic, with a short beard and kind eyes. He drove an old but well-maintained Honda. "Full wash, please," he said. "And if possible, pay special attention to the interior." "Of course." "Any stains?" "No, I just want the car to smell good. I have a first date today." I smiled. "She's lucky." He laughed. "I hope so." "What's your name?" "Marie." "Dan." "Nice to meet you." When he picked up his car an hour later, he said, "Great job. The car looks like new." "Thank you." "Marie, would you like to have coffee sometime?" I was surprised. No one had ever asked me out on a date before, at least not so directly. I don't know. Think about it. I come here every week. If you agree, just let me know." The following week, he came back. "So? Coffee?" he asked hopefully. "Okay," I replied, "but I'm only free on Sunday." "Sunday is perfect." We met at a small coffee shop near my house. Dan turned out to be a math teacher at a local school. 30 years old, divorced, no children. "And you?" "Tell me about yourself," he asked. "Nothing special. I work at a car wash and live alone." "And before that?" I paused. How could I tell him that until I was 24, I had been a domestic servant for my own parents? "I was helping my family," I said cautiously. "A noble occupation. And your education?" "High school." "Do you want to continue your education?" "I don't know. For now, I'm getting used to living on my own." Dan was a good listener. He didn't press me with questions or judge me for my lack of ambition. He just listened. We started seeing each other every Sunday. We went to the movies, walked in parks, and had lunch at inexpensive restaurants. Dan paid for everything, even though I offered to split the bill. "I earn a teacher's salary, not a millionaire's," he laughed, "but it's enough for coffee and movies." 2 months later, he kissed me. It was the first time in my life. We were sitting in his car after the movie, and he suddenly leaned over. "May I?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. The kiss was gentle and timid, like teenagers in love for the first time. "Marie," he said quietly, "I like you. Very much. I like you too. But I have a feeling you're hiding something." I tensed up. "What do you mean?" "You never talk about the past. About your family, friends, previous job. It's as if your life began a few months ago." He was right. I really hadn't told him anything. I was afraid he would judge me or think I was weird. It's hard to explain, I said. Try. And I told him about my parents who used me as a servant, about running away to Florida, about being kicked out of the house and blackmailed, about how I got the money to move. Dan listened silently. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. I'm sorry, I said finally. I'm sure this sounds strange. No, he replied. It sounds painful. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You don't judge me for blackmailing you? Judge you? Marie, you worked for your parents for free for 24 years, and then you took what was rightfully yours. That's not blackmail, that's justice. For the first time, someone understood me completely. He didn't judge me, he didn't pity me, he just understood. That night, I cried. Not out of grief, but out of relief. I had finally found someone with whom I could be myself. Our relationship developed slowly. Dan was in no hurry to get intimate, understanding that this was all new to me. We just spent time together, getting to know each other, building trust. A year later, I moved in with him. Not because I couldn't afford the rent. By then, Carlos had raised my salary to $12 an hour, and I could live on my own. I moved because I wanted to. For the first time in my life, I made a choice not out of necessity, but out of desire. Are you sure? Dan asked. Aren't we rushing things? I'm sure, I replied. His apartment was bigger and cozier. It had a large kitchen where I could cook for someone I loved. But this time, cooking was a choice, not a chore. One day, Dan asked, Marie, have you thought about going back to school? What school? University, college. You're smart. I don't have the money for school. There are programs for adult students. Scholarships, loans. I thought about it. 27 years old. Isn't it too late to start? What if I don't succeed? What if you do? 6 months later, I applied to a local college, to the social work program. I wanted to help girls who were as lost as I had been. I did well on the entrance exams. Life experience compensated for gaps in education. Congratulations, said the dean when the results were announced. You are a student starting in September. At the age of 30, I sat down at a desk for the first time as a student, not as a maid cleaning the classroom. Studying was difficult. I had to work at a car wash, study, and maintain my relationship with Dan, but I managed. For the first time in my life, I was doing what I wanted to do. 3 years passed. I graduated from college with good grades and found a job at a social support center. I helped women who found themselves in difficult life circumstances. Many of them reminded me of myself, lost, dependent, not knowing how to live on their own. How did you do it? Asked one of them, a girl in her 20s who had run away from her abusive husband. How did you learn to live on your own? Step by step, I replied. It's scary at first, but then it gets easier. What if it doesn't work out? Then you try again. I hadn't spoken to my parents for 5 years. Sometimes I called Jackie, and he told me the news from home. Mom continued to work at the hospital, and Dad worked in construction. They hired a cleaning lady and started ordering food from restaurants. Life went on as usual. Do they ever ask about me? I asked. Rarely, Jackie replied honestly. But I know they sometimes remember. What do they say? That you could come back if you wanted to. But I didn't want to go back. I had my own life, a job I liked, a husband who loved me, friends who cared about my opinion. Last year, Dan proposed to me, simply, without fanfare, at home in the kitchen after dinner. Marie, I want you to be my wife. Are you sure? I asked, just as he had once asked me. I'm sure. The wedding was small, only our closest friends. I invited Jackie and her family, Melissa, and a few colleagues. I didn't invite my parents. When the priest asked if anyone objected to the marriage, I thought for a second about my mom and dad. Would they object? Would they say that Dan wasn't good enough for me? Or that I wasn't good enough for him? But they weren't there. And that was right. I am now 31 years old. I work as a social worker, am studying for a master's degree in psychology, and live with my husband in our own house. I have a cat named Oscar and a garden where I grow tomatoes. Sometimes I dream about the old house, the kitchen, where I spent my childhood and youth. My mother shouting, "Marie, bring the tea!" My father reading the newspaper at the table. I wake up and realize it's just a dream. My real life is here, in this house, with this person, with this job. Jackie called recently. "Marie, Mom's sick. Her heart. She's in the hospital." "Seriously?" "Seriously. She asked about you. She said she wanted to talk to you. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to go, to see the woman who gave birth to me, maybe to apologize, or to forgive her. But another part of me said, why? What difference would it make?" "I'll think about it," Jackie replied. "To this day, I don't know if I'll go home. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But it will be my choice. Not out of a sense of duty or guilt, but because I want to. That's what freedom is. Not revenge, not escape, not rebellion. Just the right to choose. The right to say yes or no. The right to live the way you want, not the way others expect. I used to think that freedom was when no one forced you to cook and clean. Now I know that freedom is when you decide for yourself what to do with your life. And that's the best gift I could give myself.